Someone recently asked the question, what is the proper amount of cardio and what type should be used with a strength training program? So, first of all, everyone needs aerobic activity in their lives. Even outside of any training context, everyone should go outside and take walks or garden or other casual activity, not just for the aerobic benefit, but to disconnect and take a mental break from work and domestic life and the digital world that is consuming us more and more every day. I also think there's something really refreshing about a change of scenery. The four main lifts definitely tax your heart's ability to maintain blood pressure, and anyone who's even near the end of novice training knows just how winded a heavy set can leave you. Because of this, during novice training, no additional amount of cardio is really needed for most people. After this, though, it's worthwhile for almost everyone to have some cardio component in their training. The key consideration is this: your body will adapt to whatever activity you regularly expose it to. So, slow, long distance exercise, like jogging for instance, encourages the loss of fast twitch muscle fiber mass because it's not being used in jogging, in favor of slow twitch muscle mass, the main type of muscle used to sustain that kind of activity. Just look at any competitive endurance athlete to confirm this. This presents some problems for us because that's exactly the trend we're trying to reverse in older people. That's the aging process at work. It's kind of scary when you think about it that this type of slow and easy exercise is the only kind recommended to the vast majority of seniors by professionals they rely on for advice on how to stay strong and healthy. Anyway, we still need to tax the heart and lungs, but in a way that reinforces the adaptations our strength training is encouraging. The magic answer here is high intensity interval training, or HIIT. And the reason why is because of the energy systems and muscle fibers being utilized during this style of exercise. Strength training relies heavily on the phosphagen energy system and fast glycolysis to sort of power the exercises, and places a high demand on fast twitch muscle fibers because of the maximal and immediate nature of those movements. HIIT is essentially a series of sprints at near maximal effort if they're performed properly, with restricted rest periods between each effort. Because it's an all-out sprint, it mainly uses fast twitch muscle fibers. It has to because it's an explosive activity. These sprints last for usually around 60 seconds or less, which means they rely on the same energy systems as strength training does. Again, they have to because the aerobic energy systems would take too long to supply power in this situation. So we have a great match in terms of metabolic and structural demands on the body. The speed of the phosphagen and glycolytic systems comes at a price, though. The phosphagen system must be recharged, so to speak, by slower aerobic systems. And glycolysis produces a lot of byproducts that, once again, aerobic systems have to sort of clean up. The difference is that during strength training, we give our aerobic systems all the time they need to clean up this mess we've created before we do it again. With HIIT, we restrict the rest periods to actively challenge our aerobic systems to improve their performance. This allows us to have the benefits of cardio without the interference effects that come from more conventional cardio activities. And it takes much less time, so that's always a plus. So, what's a good HIIT exercise? HIIT can be applied to almost every exercise, but we have a couple criteria for picking a great choice. The most obvious is we should try to involve as much muscle mass as possible for all the reasons. So, full body movements. Now remember, if you're doing it right, you're going to be absolutely exhausted. When people are exhausted, they make mistakes. So, the right exercise will be low skill. There shouldn't be much to think about or much to screw up. And if you screw something up, you shouldn't be in danger of a major injury. So, yoke carries come to mind here, which, if you're not familiar with them, is basically walking around with a heavy loaded bar on your back. It uses most of the body, so that's good. But if you're tired and you misstep, you've got a lot of weight on your back that's going to make that sprained ankle a whole lot worse. Low skill also means low risk, so you shouldn't be trapped under a weight. Also remember that if you're doing it right, this will be fast and dynamic, so low impact movements are a good idea as well. Again, let's use the yoke carry example. Rushing around with a heavy bar on your back is going to introduce a lot of dynamic stresses on your axial skeleton, pelvis, and legs. Not an ideal situation for maintaining joint health in people over 50, right? Another great example here is running. Sprints are probably not as hard on your knees as long distance jogging is, but sprinting moves your body at high speeds, which isn't as inherently low risk as other options. Also, we need to exhaust all of our muscle mass in a very short time frame, 60 seconds or less, which is going to be virtually impossible with unweighted movements. So sprinting isn't the best option here either. An option that I want to mention is a heavy medicine ball or just a big rock. This can be lifted from the ground and tossed or thrown over alternating shoulders. It's not the best option for an older lifter because it's a bit more dynamic, takes learning a few new skills like lapping and shouldering a stone, and is arguably higher risk because you're essentially deadlifting in a fatigued state, which may increase the chance of injury. And you can't easily adjust the load unless you have a bunch of rocks. The reason I mention it is it's a very compact piece of equipment. It can be stored outside year-round, only requires a small patch of ground to use, and most importantly, it's cheap or free. The better options all cost several $100s up to about $1,000. So, full body, low skill, and low impact. A couple great options are a rowing machine, like the C2 rower, or an Airdyne-style stationary bike, like the Rogue Echo bike. They can both easily time the intervals, which is convenient. Your body isn't traveling at any speed, and if anything goes wrong, you can stop at any moment without consequences. My only wish is that they had the capability of much more resistance, but they're both great options. The superior option, in my opinion, is the sled or prowler. It doesn't get lower skill than this. You just push it. And again, at any moment, you can stop without consequence. My preferred way of using the sled is to load it with enough weight that you can just move it when pushing as hard as you can. This automatically forces you to keep up your pace because otherwise, the sled stops moving. You don't get that incentive with the rower or the bike. Also, even though you're doing a lot of work, you're barely moving, so there's little risk of injury. Its only detraction is that it requires a substantial length of track to push it on, which isn't always convenient if that track is the road in front of your house and it's raining or there's traffic or nosy neighbors or whatever. To figure out how long your track should be, take your empty sled and push it at the target pace for 30 seconds. This allows a 60-second effort while returning to the start. If you don't have that much room, push the sled for 15 seconds and make 2 laps or 4 total trips. If you have a smaller space than that, do the math to further divide 60 seconds into 3-4 laps. You get the idea. This way, you just have to time the rest periods because the effort is a set distance. So to start, push the sled for 60 seconds, then rest for 2 minutes. I refer to this as 60 seconds on, 120 seconds off. Complete, say, 3 of these cycles your first day. You could start with 1 session a week and add a cycle each session until you get up to 5 or 6 cycles. Then maybe add a second session per week, starting that second session at 3 cycles and progress it up the same way. I think 2 sessions a week is probably sufficient for most late novice and intermediate masters, possibly done the day after each strength training day. If you're on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday 3-day program, you could add conditioning to the end of your light day workout midweek and another session on Saturday. If you're on a 4-day split, you could add conditioning to the end of your upper days. Some lifters might incorporate a third conditioning day in their programs, but there'd have to be a reason for needing it. The only one that comes to mind is if they had a significant amount of weight to lose. Remember also, this isn't including regular daily activity that everyone should have in an active lifestyle. Anyway, from there, you can add small increases in weight each session or reduce the rest periods incrementally, maybe down to about a minute. Or even experiment with changing the on interval to 30 seconds, maybe. You could also increase or decrease the length of your track, which would change the speed you need to travel at to complete a lap in your target time, whatever that is. Obviously, this would affect your load amount as well, right? Another idea could be to keep the track length the same and load the sled heavy for a slow day and lighter for a fast day, where you have to do twice the laps in the same interval of time. That's the beauty of the sled. It's an extremely versatile piece of equipment that's really only limited by your creativity. If you have any more questions on this subject, leave a comment and we'll discuss this more. Take care, you guys. Talk to you soon.